Hey, Chris.
Hey, Drew, what's up? What's going on?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm cool. Hanging in there. How's the thesis going?
It's going. I'm slowly making progress.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Hey, Nisha, how you doing?
I'm good. Exhausted.
Staying up late partying.
Work hard, party harder.
That's right. That's right.
It's a good response. Hey, Andrew. Hey, Simone.
Hello, friends.
What's up, you guys?
Must come down.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
How are you
Hello.
all?
Doing, Joe?
Good.
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 Nice to see you all. What a lovely spring day.
For sure.
Yeah? How are you? I missed you. I missed some of you last week. That's not a guilty statement. I'm glad you took the time off. I'm just saying I missed you. I'm just saying I missed you. How's life? How's Design Studio teaching treating you?
Kicking booty.
You're kicking it, or it's kicking you?
No, it is kicking mine.
I sort of like the neutral way you stated that, Simone, actually.
It does fluctuate, but I think it averages that it's kicking mine. So
Anisha, how are you feeling? Better?
Yeah.
You're back in the world?
Yeah. But still, I keep going into different worlds over time. Yeah.
That is an occupational, sorry.
My head's at a lot of places. Yeah.
I love that. That's the t-shirt for your DMI class. My head's in a lot of places.
relatable. My brain hurts.
I was talking to my friend. I was teaching a graduate class at RISD once, and I asked them how their studio class was going. And they said, well, our professor said to us, it was if we all went for a walk in the woods and he turned around and we weren't there anymore. I definitely don't feel that way with you guys. I have to say, I don't feel that way. You seem to be on top of it all. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So 3 more weeks left. This is our third to the last class next week, and then week after that. So we're almost done. So just to check in, the idea was for the final class on May 5th is for everybody to make a draft presentation of their proposal. And I think the best way to do that is we'll figure this out, but I can't remember, you guys gonna have 20 minutes or 25 minutes to present this year?
I think it's 20, but they may have changed it. That's what it was last semester.
Okay, so I'll confirm that, but I'm thinking not your whole draft, end of semester presentation, but just the part for your degree project. Maybe we'll pin that at around 10 or 15 minutes. That way you could just use it in your final presentation. And so in 2 weeks, I'm just going to ask each of you to make a sort of a final presentation about your degree project. And the best way to sort of think about that is just using the outline that you're working on right now, and condensing it and maybe making it a bit more visual, a little less text, for example. I think it's really nice to have a written version where you can go into some depth, and then a shorter annotated version that's going to be more visual, right? So for example, Drew could show us video clips of his fantastic game and how that's relating to what he's doing. Andrew could just take pictures of your entire sketchbook, and that would be a perfect presentation. I would sit there. Do you guys know what I mean? And I think, like, Simone, you've got tons of work to do. Anisha, you're in good shape. Chris, you've got awesome content already sorted out. So, just play to the strengths that you've created for your work and cover the other bases as well. The whole point of this final presentation is one, to let the DMI community know what it is you're working on, so we can sort of come and help you with anything, give you support, help you with research that we've done that might touch base. It's also for you to sort of let other people know what you're doing, so you can start to think about who might be a good advisor for you next year, and the kind of work you want to do. And then we can also help make connections for you that you might not otherwise be aware are there. So it's just going public, frankly. That's just what you're doing right now. Does that make sense? It's pretty basic. So I think you're all in great shape. Honestly, I think if the reviews were next week, you could all do a just fantastic presentation. I'm not concerned about it at all. But it's not, Simone. It's not. So you've got 2 more weeks to work on it, and I think you're in great shape.
Joe,
really
quick
do.
question. Joe, you
Yeah.
said that it was the presentation you want in 2 weeks. Is that what you said?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's the draft presentation. It's the same one that you would use as part of your end of semester review. So then all you'd have to do is add to that whatever elective work you've done or whatever studio work you've done, right?
Okay. So the quick question, Joe, should we put together a mock 20-minute presentation?
No, I'm only asking you for the degree for your thesis
Okay.
proposal. I'm only asking you for your thesis proposal. Sorry, I keep calling it degree project because our senior symposium for their degree project is next Tuesday. We'd love to have you guys join us if you want. I'm sorry, for your thesis proposal. And then we're not gonna, I'm happy to look at your work. I'd love to see it. I'm really looking forward to reviews this year, but I want to focus on the thesis proposal for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So how's the progress going? Do you feel like you've made progress the last few weeks? Great. Well, who'd like to start with an update? This is always the most awkward moment in a class for a professor.
I'm happy to go first.
Okay, thank you.
If everybody is happy with that.
And is it okay if I'm recording this for everyone?
Yes, I'm grateful that you are. In fact, I think I emailed you, but I would like the one from our meeting last week.
Oh yeah, I've got it. I'm sorry.
No worries. I sent you an email, but I just wanted to put
Great,
that
thank you.
seed in your brain. So I'm just going to share my screen really quickly. I've started writing the proposal. It's long, shocker to absolutely nobody. I named this abstract, but I think it's more of sort of an introduction to the actual book. which is nice, and it's repeated in my human data piece, but it's under like explaining this like multi-layered perspective that I have on people and how I'm trying to extend it to objects and ideas with the technical product concept. And just because in an attempt to not fall behind on other things, the human data extension is taking very long because we run out of spoons frequently. Sorry, spoons is what we call energy in my house. I'm not sure if I've made that clarification before, but just sort of like connecting the stray thoughts that I've been thinking about and then talking about like where, like what the field actually is. I think I sort of narrowed it down to these 3 topics through the lens of speculative / design fiction structure, because it's all about like future predictions and projections. And these are all sort of questions surrounding topics that I want to discuss in the process. And then sort of like what my pillars for my practice, I guess, is what I would call them. Like I like the phrase design virtues, but I thought them more of like pillars for my practice. And then figuring out what to include here, because there's very unclear lines between who I am and this project. And then coming up with a project list, listing out classes. And yeah, it's happening. The reading is going really slowly because I have about a 3 to 4 hour window where I'm awake enough and engaged enough to read the like dense manufacturing texts. And like the like philosophical stuff. But that's where that is at. I finished the box. I'm excited to show the video for human data once I'm done with it. And I am still trying to figure out what I'm doing for data human. Although recently Martha recommended that because I'm so interested in sort of the biocomputing, bioluminescence, bioscience, bioenergy stuff, to find an inexpensive way of sort of beginning that exploration. So thank you everybody for your feedback. I didn't go to class on Tuesday because my partner was exposed to COVID and I didn't want to expose everybody else. So I sent in a video of my presentation and everybody gave some really useful feedback. I'm very grateful. And yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how to take bite-sized chunks unsuccessfully. So that's where I'm at. Like everything's kind of halfway done and it's just a matter of working on the thing that's interesting to me at that moment every time I sit down to do something. So yeah, that's my update.
Oh, okay. Thoughts? Look, it looks a lot more than halfway done to me, Simone, but
Oh, thanks. No, it feels very halfway. There's a lot of narrowing that I still need to do. Like there's so many topics I enjoy and want to touch, but like just what that fraction of those topics looks like and how they fit together is still rather murky. Like what level of impact and whether it's theoretical or practical and how that can be used, like all of those things are still things that I'm thinking about. And I may not have answers to, but they feel that they need more to be more solid before I feel like it's more than halfway done. So.
All right, thoughts for Simone?
I think that for me, it'll be like, it'll come together when we see your black box. I don't forgot if you said you were showing that to us next studio class. Okay.
I am hoping to. I'm being very gentle and empathetic with myself about what I'm actually capable of doing every day. And so I'm at a good place. I need to edit the video and the paper is like 75% done. Once the video is done, like it's gonna be great. I lost half of my work the other day and I've not recovered from that. I like imported all the the footage into After Effects and like ordered it and sort of was deciding on a narrative and know what I'm going to do for the audio. And then like I must have, I think my computer decided to shut down or something, and I forgot that I didn't save it, and then I went back to look for it and it was gone. So I need to start over. So that's been sort of like demoralizing. But yeah, you guys should see that soon. Hopefully within the next week for sure. But
Yeah, I think that'll just be like that good like visual half that Joe was talking about. That'll bring it all
Mhm.
together. Yeah.
and one of the audio, so I'm going to make 2 different versions of the video, because we talked a lot about an instructional video, like walking people through asking themselves those questions, like using the box. I'm definitely doing a demo of that. I did not bother doing all the layers. I did the 2 outermost layers and the 2 innermost layers as a model. And so I'll use the same visual. So that will be one audio. And then the other audio is, I wrote that introduction that I wrote is very, very, I feel like it's very emotional. Like I talk about like the value of the human experience and how it is reproduced in the objects that we create. And I talk about like, you know, how all data is human and all humans are data. And so like how that ties into how we view our stuff. And so like, I just want to sort of like overlay that with that, maybe like some sort of background music. I don't really know what to use yet on that front, but those are the 2 things that I want to do for that.
Sounds cool. Yeah.
Simone, one thing I loved about your draft is that you included your design values, or as you call them, pillars.
Yeah.
I honestly, to the extent that any of you can define those, I would urge you to include those in your proposal. I think it's a great idea. I really do.
Yeah.
And I saw a clarity, even just as you were scrolling through it quickly, that I think you only could have gotten to through doing this draft. Because
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of stuff in your head, like Anisha, there's a lot of stuff in your head, but
Yeah.
I saw a clarity there. And it wasn't anything, not that you haven't been clear, it's just that you're pulling it all together right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think for all of you, please think of this proposal as just another tool to help you gather your thoughts. It's not meant to be a totem. It's not meant to be a billboard. It's meant to be a tool to help you get to your thinking more deeply.
Yeah.
And so by writing it, that's one way to do it. By making the presentation, that's another way to do it. By making it public, by speaking to people, that's another way to do it. And I think you're all going to find that each one of those aspects of thinking about your work and reflecting upon it is going to change the way you think. It's going to really make these ideas settle in deep for you. And it's going to help you create your own language to discuss it. I'm already seeing it, Simone, with your work. You're developing a language to talk about it. This is really, really hard to do if you think about it. Like when you're in an undergraduate program, you're trying to use other people's language. You're trying to understand other people's principles, methods, vocabulary, grammatical structure, style. But when you're a grad student, that, you know, you should already be very comfortable with those things. You're trying to create your own language. And so I'm seeing huge progress. This is why I'm excited to be working with each of you. But now that you're moving into the written form, I'm seeing this fantastic progress for all of you. And the fact that you can, define your design pillars or virtues at this point is fantastic. Are they going to change? Yeah, probably. Are they going to change that much? Maybe not. Maybe not. Right? So this is what it means to be a graduate student. And by the way, if any of you want to be a professor someday, it means you having this language that you're creating yourself, really deep in your cellular level. So you just get up and you're speaking about it. And I'll guarantee you, you watch the presentations in a couple of weeks, the defenses, and you'll see people who have done this. And there's a fascinating power that takes place when they make their presentations. You compare it to their last one that you saw, and you compare it to the final, it's amazing. It's really amazing to see. Like they just embody everything that they've been working on. And sometimes somebody that can only come when you start to put it all together.
Yeah.
And you get out of your head. So, you know, that's the idea of it.
Yeah. One of the things that I've been asking myself that I don't have an answer for, and I'd be interested in everybody else's answer. Sabrina, asked us, who is your thing for? Like, who are you making? Who's your audience? And the other sort of analogy, like thing that happened that is related was that I also asked my mom, who's a pediatric anesthesiologist, why she became a pediatric anesthesiologist. Like, what about her job gets her to go every day? Like, what is the thing? Like, why does she love it so much? And in realizing, like, understanding her job better from her perspective, I realized that I want my work to be for humans. Like, that's my audience. And that's really overwhelming, right? Because that's, our entire world. Like, how can I can't, that's too big of an audience. But I also think it's simply a matter of getting the right people to hear it for that level of reach. And so I worry about accessibility, but that's a sort of like thing I can tackle by myself. I worry about how to put out information that will get picked up. And sort of like in the simplest manner, not necessarily marketing, because I realize like that's part of the process, but like, how do you put things out with more than a hope that somebody will see it? If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a good question. Yep.
Or how do you resign yourself to accepting that you need to make work in that no one will see, like, at the same time, right?
Or maybe it's somewhere in between. If you're a Silicon Valley company, all you're talking about is hitting your scale.
Oh.
It's no point in doing anything if you're not going to have 10 million users within 6 months. But I mean, that's one way of working, but there's a lot of ways of working.
How
There's a
do
lot
you
of ways of
change
working.
society? Like, that's a question that I've been asking myself a lot. Like, how do we change society? How do we get people to care about the world we're living in, about things outside of themselves? How can I write something that is so universally relatable that if someone just happens to interact with it, it will be impactful, if that makes sense?
I think if you just literally go through everything that like Chris, Anisha, Andrew, what they're doing, they're just taking what they love and making projects out of it. And because in the medium that they do it makes it like interactive and engaging for people. So you just have to like find what that is, because Anisha's like teaching people about toxic relationships using UI and UX. That's what she's really into. So it's just like natural. Andrew's creating this awesome like storyboard to like get people to think about these philosophical concepts through a book. It's just like, yeah.
Basically Drew said half of what I was gonna say, but like better than I would have said it. What I would say is make work for yourself. My famous line. But if you make something, like, for a long time, especially in undergrad, I used to say at work that I made work for trash cans, and I was hoping to someday make work for recycling bins, because I'd make all this printed stuff that I would like literally watch them like leave my work and throw it in the trash, and I'd be like, cool, you're welcome. But like nowadays, it's more of like Drew said, if you make something that you would want to look at or read or listen to, then you're gonna, one, if you're like me and you nerd out so much that people just like can't help but listen to you, like it's like infectious if you love something. Or Chris talking about music, right? Like I have the Coltrane Apple Music starter kit because I was like, well, if Chris likes it this much, it must be good. And it is, turns out. But no, it's like if you talk about the things that you care about from your perspective, other people will hear it and they'll believe you, and just do it. You talked about being human, do it with heart and think about how you would see it.
That's really good advice. And I honestly, I think you're doing that, Simone. I honestly think you're doing that.
Trying. I think,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
The
think you're doing it.
anxiety assails me every once in a while, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But so often I think there's pressure on us to do something grandiose, when in fact, what Andrew and Drew are talking about is really where change comes from. It comes from the individual, especially a creative individual who's putting themselves and their work out there in these ways that stir others' emotions, that it provokes empathy in people. I mean, I think that's a big part of it, right? And not setting out to change the world. There's lots of ways to change the world too. There's lots of ways to change people's lives. So yeah, the most important thing is doing the work. All right.
Thank you for your feedback.
Good stuff, guys. All right.
Good to keep working
Yeah, it's
on.
good. Nice work on the draft too. All right. Thank you, Simone. All right. Who'd like to go next?
I'll go next, Joe.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris.
Let me see. I'm just going to share the screen real quick. This is, I've added on two more categories to my project in relationship to, excuse me, I'm sorry, you guys. I've added on two more things to my project, two more categories, Obamacare and Hurricane Katrina. And the purpose of that is to talk about how my project again deals with, excuse me, guys. I'm just gonna this a little bit. This is the name of my project, From Reconstruction to COVID-19, How the Medical Profession Makes Blacks Sick Through Racism and Healthcare Inequality, which started with slavery. And the thing is, I am taking, the reason why I added those two new categories has more to do with how the research that I've been doing has to do with how medicine has always been closely aligned with slavery. And that is in terms of the medical profession, whether it be down south, which supported slavery, and the same thing up north as well. And the reason I'm using Hurricane Katrina and Obamacare in the same vein is that with Hurricane Katrina, over 1,500 people died. And Obamacare would have taken those 1,500 people and they would have been on a healthcare plan. So the points that I'm making throughout my project have to do with the fact of who deserves healthcare and who doesn't. So for instance, the reason I chose to do, for instance, with Obamacare, as an example, I chose that in there, and I felt the need to put that in there primarily because people have always had this idea of Obamacare as free healthcare, which in reality it's not free. And also the whole idea of giving Black people something that, for instance, that they work for, but that the average mindset is that they don't deserve it, even though they work for it. So I'm making these connections between how the medical industry, how doctors and so on have always been able to keep, like especially with Hurricane Katrina, where so many people died. But the thing is too, they died because a lot of the people had cardiovascular diseases once they entered, for instance, the Superdome. Once they entered the Superdome, it was filled with feces and just vomit. It was like one giant petri dish of disease. So I'm relating that to, for instance, how Obamacare has more people signed up, but yet it's still vilified as a bad thing because it's healthcare for all Americans, not just for Black people, it's for everybody. But for some strange reason, people just automatically think, oh, it's only for Black people. No, it's not. Obamacare, that's why he was the president. He did it for everybody. So I'm trying to make those connections in terms of talking about, my basic goal is basically talking about how the medical profession dictates who deserves care and who doesn't. So for instance, when you look at COVID-19 as an example, more people of color, especially Black people, got sicker, more hospitalizations, more deaths. And that goes back to the beginning of Reconstruction, where Black people were put on their own after slavery had ended, so on and so forth, and they didn't have a safety net. So I'm trying to compare the two and talking about how safety nets for people in this country are beneficial, obviously, but at the same time, they're vilified because it turns political, like Obamacare did. So I'm trying to look at Black healthcare throughout, from Reconstruction to COVID-19 and beyond. And basically, my goal with my project is to create better medical outcomes and to prepare Black people for the next pandemic that's surely on its way. You know what I mean? Because none of us was prepared, but Black people really weren't prepared because we didn't have the resources. You know, we couldn't stay at home and not go to work, you know, essential worker, blah, blah, blah. So the politics involved in this and the human empathy involved in how do you, why can't everyone be treated fairly when it comes to medical care, you know, to the medical profession? So that's one of the reasons why I decided to add Obamacare and Hurricane Katrina, because Hurricane Katrina exposed the medical industries, the medical profession's faults way before COVID-19. When people went into the Superdome, it was like disease, disease, disease. And people also too had pre-existing conditions before they went into the Superdome. So they couldn't get medicine. They couldn't, you know, the United States government took them 2 weeks to get in there. So where is that lack of empathy towards people that are suffering? And I mean, everybody who was in the Superdome wasn't Black. It was white, Black, pink, and purple. It was everybody. But yet, why the lack of empathy towards those that really need help? And then they were called refugees when in reality they're American citizens. You know what I mean? So that's the part I never could understand. How can you call them refugees if they're American citizens? That makes no sense. So that's kind of like where I'm at with this project. And I'm kind of working on a bunch of different things in terms of the classes that I'm going to be taking next year. I'm going to be basically most likely doing an exhibit. You know, I'd like to really do some type of exhibit design or basically a timeline for this project. So that's kind of like where I'm at right now, you guys. I'm just going to stop sharing.
Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome.
What do you think? Thoughts for Chris?
What you've been bringing in weekly, because Chris for Joey just like brings in AR examples they pretty much look like exhibitions, like what you bring in these AR rooms of the people you have. So I mean, I've never used Aero or AR, or very rarely. So I wonder if there's like a way to put all the information, if there's like a way to click on a portrait or a word or something and have, and people could walk through it and learn that way.
Exactly, that would be great. That's excellent, Drew. That's the reason why I definitely want to do an exhibit design where people, when they click on something, they learn something. When they click on something, a website pops up, a video pops up. You know, and something. I really want this to be very interactive, so people can basically follow the narrative of what I'm trying to say in terms of the lack of healthcare, and also how do people. You know, and that's one of the reasons why I'm like trying to come up with something where I'm trying to make a better medical outcome for users, because I think it would be a good idea for people to be, you know, go in and press this button, press that button, and something comes up, something moves, you know, a film comes in, takes you back to Reconstruction, a film comes in, takes you to the AIDS crisis, takes you to COVID-19, you know what I mean? So that's really what I'd like to do, definitely. That's definitely along those lines. I would definitely want to do something clearly interactive, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you're already on that path, and that just sounds like perfect for what you're doing. So yeah,
definitely. Thank you, Drew.
There's so much data involved in all the research that you've done. I wonder if a part of it could be like a data visualization project where you don't have to actually consume the data, you kind of feel the data to feel what their adversities were. I
Mhm.
mean, just a visual representation of the story that you're trying to
Oh yeah,
tell.
definitely. That's exactly what I'd
Yeah.
like to do, Anisha. Definitely. I definitely would like
Yeah.
a data visualization. Sounds like a really good idea. That's definitely along the lines. I don't want to just tell a simple story. You know what I mean? And I say that because this story this is American history. You know what I mean? It really is when you think about the whole idea of how the medical industry has always been tied into slavery, you know? And you say to yourself, like, how's it tied in? It's like, if you're a slave owner, you don't want 6 slaves because 6 slaves messes with your profit. You know what I mean? So the thing is, how can I tell that type of a story through data visualization and also through an AR situation? You know what I mean? I really want to kind of show separate stories, you know, and at the same time, maybe have one person as an example or something along those lines. But I definitely want to try something dealing with data visualization and AI. The AI thing is it's a lot of fun. I love it. It's a lot of fun. It really is.
You know, what's sort of heartbreaking to me, Chris, is that every week you come in with like another moment in American history that is a powerful example of the systemic racism.
Yeah.
And I'd never even thought about Obamacare.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Katrina made all the sense in the world when you mentioned it, but
Mhm.
Obamacare makes all the sense in the world now that you mention it.
Exactly, and that's one of the reasons why, Joe. I'm trying my best not to throw too much in there, but I have to make those connections, though.
Yeah.
You know, I really feel the need to make those connections in terms of the first Black president presents Obamacare, and everyone thinks that it's all for Black people. It's like, no,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? Really? Who told
Yeah.
you that? You know what I mean? Like, and I just feel that having those connections in terms of connecting the medical to the political, back to the medical, and then back to the, you know, and the back and forth thing that, especially with Obamacare, where it's like it's more popular than ever now. Why?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's more popular than ever. And it's like, because people need it. You know what I'm saying? Like, people need healthcare, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
And that's why I felt the need to make that connection. I was thinking about, what, you want to throw in Obamacare? Yeah, you should. You know?
Yeah, it's still one of the #1 threats for moving people from lower middle class and middle class into the poverty range.
Exactly.
Medical emergencies,
Mhm.
you know, crazy hospital bills, no insurance.
Yep.
Everything that you and generations of your family have worked for could be
Mhm.
wiped out in
Exactly.
an afternoon because of an accident or
Yep.
illness or disease. So
One hospital stay away from
yeah,
poverty.
yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
one hospital stay away from poverty. One job loss away from poverty. One, you know, all those things. One COVID, getting COVID.
Diagnosis,
Oh.
yeah. Yep.
You know.
Yep. Well, it continues to be really great work, Chris. I love Drew's suggestion about AR. It's really powerful, and yeah, it'd be really interesting to think about what you can do with that. You know,
Exactly. Both what Drew and Anisha said. Anisha with the data visualization.
yeah,
and
definitely,
Drew.
definitely.
Yeah, I definitely want to try both of those things. Definitely.
Yeah.
I did the AR for our studio class, and I had a great time. A lot of
Yeah,
fun
cool.
with the jazz projects.
Good. I think you're with Coltrane.
Well, what's Coltrane? The thing is, my project deals with the mental health of jazz musicians, and also how the mental health of jazz musicians connected with, that how, in other words, how psychopathology and creativity align. You know what I mean?
I bet you looked at my favorite.
Who, Miles?
No, Thelonious Monk.
Oh yeah, Thelonious Monk. He
Oh.
suffered from depression. He suffered from he had a lot of issues going on. But see, the thing is, I'm just trying to make that connection between what happened to them when they were young, how their creativity built up over the years, and what type of mental illness that they had. You know, like Nina Simone, perfect example. She was bipolar, not Billie Holiday. So I apologize, Anisha. But Billie Holiday, excuse me, Nina Simone was bipolar, but she was like one of the great jazz musicians, you know,
Amazing.
definitely.
So much for you to discover, Andrew, if you don't know these guys. They're so amazing. There's these people, they're so amazing.
Exactly.
All right, we got to talk jazz sometime, man. That's a whole separate
That's good.
conversation.
That
Yeah, I
sounds
look
good.
forward to that. I look forward to
Thanks, you guys.
that. All right. Thanks,
Thank
Chris.
you. Appreciate that.
Good work. Good, consistent content development week to week. Really exciting to see.
Thank you.
Exciting. All right. Andrew, you want to catch us up?
So since we last spoke, I've been working on my thesis proposal book, or document thing. And so I outlined each section. I made a InDesign file, and now I'm just like essentially filling it in. So I have the abstract is done, I think. I started putting together like for things like the my like what influenced me or like my past experience with this. So I've got some of that stuff. I have something that's like a little bit too long that I have to edit down. I haven't started working on like writing about the field yet. I'm going through my list. But I do have lots of what other people are doing. My past work. And then, yeah, I feel like I have what my 5 projects are going to be. They're like going to be kind of those visual narratives about education, dissent, and like connection. And so I sort of got 2 different versions of it. One is like you could just learn about like the past of it and how it affected it, kind of similar to my other dissent project. And then one that's more kind of speculative design, thinking about sort of how those, like Joe and I had this really good conversation about like what we thought, like what I thought the future of these things would be. And I have at this point like bullet points plus for each one. And so I'd love to kind of explore that more and then to use like the interactivity and the music and printed books like I'm doing for studio mixed with these like web experiences to kind of tell those stories, almost like just listening to you talk about what a exhibition could be. It's like a digital exhibition almost. That's sort of where I started thinking about it, was like that kind of thinking about the carousel of progress or the world of tomorrow. Still very much like that idea, but just now I have something to do it on. Just cool. As far as what I hope to be doing with my classes next year, I have lots of thoughts. There's a MIT class for narrative storytelling that I really like, or dynamic storytelling that I really like to take. Some of them don't necessarily work in my current schedule, so I have signed up for some like thesis type writing classes that were available, but I definitely don't want to just like say, oh, this is all that works, so because it's gonna use my time. So I'm gonna try to look into other courses that I think might be helpful. With that, I definitely had thought about taking some like maybe programming type classes or on the technical side, but there's lots of other things that might be good. And then yeah, that's about it. I could show you guys, but it's literally just a document, so there's not much to
Hey,
see.
Can you give us a preview of some of the bullet points plus maybe?
For the for
That'd be
like
kinda
what
fun.
So for education, we talked about like the fact that, so I think it's interesting that in school, interesting in a bad way, I guess, that in school we're kind of taught to like memorize facts and figures, and historical events and things. And I find that even though I was originally a history major when I started in school, I did that for 2 years before I realized that I was drawing websites in my notebook. But I thought that it was like people would talk about history, but they didn't really understand it. You could remember like this thing happened, but you didn't understand the context around it. And I think that one thing that the new generation is getting better at is like not necessarily having to remember things, because you have like this external like brain all the time with you. And so you can just kind of, in the future, I think there'll be more emphasis on understanding. And one way to do that would be to like put yourself in other people's shoes is one way to put it. So these kind of AR experiences we see, I think like school should definitely be something that's more immersive. That's kind of the dream, I think. And that way people will hopefully get the context and understanding. But one, like in contrast to that, I think that the day-to-day computing that we do shouldn't necessarily be immersive. It should kind of get out of the way, be contextual, and like ambient is the word I like to use for it. And so you guys all saw my more human computing video I did for last semester. And that idea is like that technology is just around us. It's like everywhere, but it's not in our faces. Like if I'm cooking dinner and I want to see how much time something's been cooking, there's just like a number right there, whether that's like in my contact lenses or, I had sort of done this like fun speculative project about like paper that was like a screen. So you could bind it together like a book, and then it would feel like paper and you could read it like a book. But if you tapped on a word, it would define it, or pop up and show you it, or you could interact with it. So even though it felt like a book, it could do all this other cool stuff. And I imagine like then taking that kind of material and putting it like on your whole table. So it's just a table, but when you put something on the table, now you could learn about it or see how long something's been cooking or the calories in your food, or just, keep reading. Anyway, it's like, I always say like the issue is like the issue is technology. So how do we solve that? It's like more technology, but I think it's just like better, different technology, different ethos, one that is more like in line with how we actually use things. And then for communication, I think like social media definitely being what it is right now is it's so disconnected from the way we actually interact with each other. And one thing I think is really interesting is that the creator of Snapchat, the idea behind that was that the way it is like everybody posts something and it's there forever, right? But if you had this like message that was almost more like you walk into the room and your friend is there, you can talk to them, and then when you leave the room, the message is gone, just like how we actually talk to each other. So I had kind of imagined this social network that was more like just like a room, and it would be scoped out to what kind of you were doing at that moment. So if you're at work, it could be your coworkers and it's all professional and it's a certain way. But if with your family, it's different, and that would also impact like how many people could be there. So if I'm in my like kind of out in public world, maybe I'm seeing ads and I'm talking to 300 people. But if I'm with my family, I've got like 5 people that I really care about, and our messages stay, and we have memories, and we can look at things together, and there are no ads. And I think that would just be like a better way to do it. And then we got into this conversation about what if you made like a social media or a social network that was really bad, like that just people did not want to use, like not bad, because I think that would be better almost, but it's like non-addictive, so much so that would like repel you. I think that would be kind of funny. Like if it was like Twitter, but the post like fly past you in like 2 seconds, you couldn't even read it because it's all garbage anyway. Even though I love Twitter. So yeah, those are some speculative projects. And Descent, I think, is the tough one, because when you imagine how do you get away from, I don't know, the government or corporations or whatever, when you're kind of advocating for a world that's connected. And I definitely thought in Jan's class that the answer was like people would just start going back to printing things. I'm not sure I've come up with a better solution than that yet, but I want to think about it and imagine it. And part of my project I'm doing for seminar, which is very based in like how do computers dream, and like kind of thinking about weird surrealism, sort of combining surrealism and technology is that project. But I've been thinking a lot about like, so that's set in the future, in the binary inspired year 10-10-10. But like, what do you, in that world, what is the role of technology, and also like how it keeps getting kind of replaced, and eventually there's going to be so much computers that it just like covers the earth. So yeah, thinking about like Descent, I feel like has a lot to do with like just the way people are, but also the progress of technology itself. So yeah, those are like the bullet points plus, but I definitely think those projects would be things that could either be like fancy websites where you could click and use it and be like, oh, the social media is terrible, and then it would pop up and be like, hey, by the way, this is what all the social media is like. Just I always like the word entropy. It's like the entropy of social media. or just like, and like forget the post, it just comes up and it's like, hi, you're fat. You're like, oh, thanks. It's like, why cut out the middleman, you know? What's the difference? Yeah, that's about that. But so I think I probably try to write up like a little bit of those ideas in terms of how somebody might actually use it. But I feel like the idea is like clearer in my head. So just writing, kind of like Simone's doing, like writing everything down. I guess that's kind of the point we're all at, but that's really where I'm trying to live right now.
It's so fun to think about this. This reminds me of this wonderful book. Do you guys know the Russian author Gary Steingart? Gary Steingart. He wrote a book called Super Sad True Love Story, and it takes place in the near future. Have you heard of this, Andrew?
No, but I'm looking it up.
It takes place in the near future, and everybody wears this device around their neck. It's called a tchotchke. And what it does is everywhere you go, it immediately sizes you up against everybody else in the room. So if you walk into a bar, it tells you that you're the 932nd richest person in the room. It says you're the 371st handsomest man in the room. So everyone know, right, Drew? Right? You're like, everywhere you go, you're constantly being ranked and rated about everything. And then if I remember correctly, people can rate you live in the space while you're there, which is just, so if you want to talk about a really negative experience of social media, this is exactly one of them. But it's absolutely ubiquitous. Everybody just wears these things, right? So it's sort of,
That's very interesting.
Is it a good book?
Weird.
Is it worth the reading?
Oh,
thing?
I love the book. I loved, it's a very
Sounds
sweet, it's about a love story. It's like a love story in this weird time of social techno, whatever you want to call it, apocalypse or something. I don't know. It really is a sweet story. He's a brilliant writer. Really
What's it
well
called real
worth it.
quick? I'm sorry. What's it called again real quick?
It's called
Super-
Super Sad True Love Story by Gary Steingart.
All right, thanks.
I'll put it in the chat. Part of the reason I mention it is because you don't see, outside of science fiction where you see every great sort of thing, you don't see technology used as a plot device in a love story typically, right?
Right.
Unless
Yeah.
unless it's a notebook or a letter.
I think that's like a good way to say like part of like why I want to do these narratives is that I think I'm definitely inspired by those videos like in the 80s where it was like the computer of the future will be this thing. But I find that like when it is actually telling like a story that is kind of just features these things and has like a moral to it, that it can be more impactful.
Yeah. Well, that also reminds me of that wonderful movie by Michel Gondry with Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet in it. What's the name of it? The Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless
The
Mind.
Spotless Mind. Yeah.
It's a beautiful movie. Really beautiful.
Yeah, that movie
was
is one that I
genuinely
did
a
not
sad
expect.
movie, but beautiful.
Right. I didn't expect the technology sci-fi elements to show up in it, but they worked so well.
Oh yeah.
That's a good movie.
The Descent one is interesting to me too. I don't know. It would be interesting to think what you do with that.
Yeah, I think like that's going to definitely be a case of looking at like kind of those historical references, and that's definitely why I want to start there. And then think about like what does it mean, because all of these projects are like technology is so wonderful, let's try to like keep it that way. And talking about like why it's not inherently this thing that people think it is in the way people treat it. And so with something like Descent, it's like people were oppressed before the first iPod came out. Like it's just about how do you kind of take those tools and turn it against it. And I think there's definitely a lot of sci-fi that like kind of ham-fistedly, like not so well, tries to use technology to be like, look, in the future, people are racist against robots. And I find like that stuff it's always like campy and pulpy or whatever, but they're like real issues. And In those cases, I'm still definitely thinking more about like how it's being used in the world today. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. And in the end, like you said, this is like the guideline, and that's something I'm very interested in. But if it has to take a turn and kind of change, I'm okay with that too. But it's not like a subject that I want to shy away from, because it's almost like where I started to do this.
Yeah. Well, it occurs to me, one major form of dissent in the financial world right now are cryptocurrencies. Like if you look what Bitcoin has done, we are witnessing a really remarkable moment in the history of money and the human race, and how we attribute value that can be exchanged. It's a dramatic departure from the way we've been doing banking for the last 500 years or so.
Yeah,
I don't know if you want to call it a form of dissent. Sorry to interrupt, but
I think it's sort of like trading one evil overlord for like another. But it's interesting because the idea of like decentralization, like I think that a lot of like peer-to-peer things, or like where there is no like central, when you like put files up on like a file sharing website and it's just like completely free, people use it to share like books and movies and music and like things that cost money, but that's like sometimes that's what dissent is getting information out even when it's not like approved.
Yeah.
And I think that like cryptocurrency could be the same thing, but when you see these like what are essentially big companies coming up and being like, we'll manage your Bitcoin wallet, that's where I'm like, you are not doing the thing that is for. That's why like I get a little bit like itchy when people start talking about their NFTs, because it's like I get why they exist from a technology side. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I can see what the issue that most people don't believe that there's really an issue. I think there is, and I get why people are using them.
Yeah.
But the way they're doing it is just making money for rich people. You're like selling a version of your art to somebody for bits, I guess.
And also, Andrew, too, Andrew, what's interesting is the fact that the commercials that we see now with Matt Damon and Steph Curry, these guys are already rich. So they're telling who is the market. Speaking of target audience, who is the target audience for those commercials when you think about it?
Right.
Who are they talking?
Other rich people.
Exactly. But also too, the whole idea of rich guys telling me, an average working guy, how I'm going to get rich off of something that I know nothing about. You know what I'm saying? So it's like the targeting, I think, is really kind of like hypocritical in some ways, because it's like you're not so much because you're already rich, but what audience are you talking to? You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's a case of the wealthy using everyone out, like using people to make money off of them. It's like, how do you get $1 million? Did you trick 1 million people to give you $1?
Right.
Like, it's not. It's just the same old story, but now it's got Matt Damon in a spacesuit or whatever.
Yeah, I know. Exactly.
It's so no, I totally agree with you. Like that's exactly right.
Who
and when those
audience?
Commercials come up in the movie theater, I get like, I want to throw up.
Yeah, and I bet you Matt and Steph are not talking about how extraordinarily and incredibly volatile cryptocurrency markets are.
Exactly.
And the $5 you have today could be $1 million tomorrow, but it's more likely to be like negative 70,000 tomorrow. So we're not talking about that. Like that's what makes me crazy. So anyway, good stuff.
Definitely.
Fun stuff, Andrew.
Appreciate it.
All right. Any other comments for Andrew? I love the fact that you and Simone both are thinking about speculative projects. I think that's how we start to break from the lock-in that we can suffer from in terms of how software is designed, how games are done, how consoles are done, how hardware is done, to rethink what a computer could be, right? How we can start to think about it.
That's the question I asked Cedric. I was like, do we have a thing that's laptops in the future? Because that was what I did for the other class.
Yeah.
And he was like, I was like, what does that look like? Do they look like the same? Like when we take into account waste, like, can they look the same? Like, can we upgrade the software and the internal hardware without like all of that waste? And he couldn't. I had to stop him and be like, no, you have to think about if the world was not the way it was, like if capitalism didn't exist, like what could it be, not what's the logical next step for the machine, or like what is the trend it's following now. And it's freeing, and it's also super stressful because you're like, I can't really imagine
Yeah.
a context outside of like, and what things you choose to bring into the future, into that future that you visualize. Like there are obviously things that exist now that are valuable that we want to keep, even if the world is not perfect. And like, how do you decide how to keep those and how to keep them separate from the bad things that they are inevitably intertwined with?
You know, the beauty of a good speculative design project is it addresses all those issues. It's not just some, you know, beautiful video to show us what it could be, which is fine. It's challenging the status quo. It's challenging the powers that be. It's challenging the institutions. It's challenging the way we, how culturally these artifacts affect us, how sociologically they affect us, how they affect us racially, what the equitable and the non-equitable parts of it are. That's why a good speculative project is a really interesting project. It's really worth doing. It should challenge all those things. It's good fun. Good fun. We should have a speculative design studio class.
Yes,
I would take
please.
that. See?
We
Let's
should
do that.
really do that. We had
Can you
a
do it after
guy-
work?
Sorry.
Can you do it after
Please do it
work?
in the evening.
Yeah, after work. Yeah, sure.
That'd be great.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah.
That would be really cool.
I don't know. I feel like I would want that to be part of the DMI curriculum, like the required DMI curriculum.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah, I could see that. I'll talk to Martha and Fish about that.
That would be
Fish
amazing.
like strongly encouraged me the only other semester to go in that direction, because I was like, I do this all day. I didn't even know that this was a thing.
Yeah,
Mm.
And then he told me about the book, and I just got like super into it because I just thought this was something that I would do like after class. I
I'm
didn't
so
know that.
ready to read that book. It's in my
yeah,
list.
me
and
too. I
can't wait.
can't
I
wait to read it. I've got
started-
it on my desktop here. I'm going to read it. All right. Any other comments for Andrew?
I want to see your paper. Please share it with me. Thank you.
Well, I want to
I
see.
did
I want
share it with
everybody
you.
to share their papers.
Is
with
it the
all of
same
them.
document? I didn't know if you had like,
Oh no, there's more stuff now. I'll share it with you.
but it's the same document, right?
It's edited, but yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. As long as the link is the same, I can find it again. I don't know. I assumed you started again for some reason.
I the other stuff, the like past stuff is all different, but that
Mm.
the abstract is the same.
Okay, cool. I'll take a look. Thank you.
All right. Drew, would you like to go next?
Oh, yes, okay. So I feel sleepy, but I got this.
Were you up late last night coding?
Yes, and it's just Yvette's class just takes a lot out of me, but in a good way.
Well, especially on a Thursday, it's like
Yeah.
the end of the week. It's exhausting, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. This is what my proposal looks like so far. It is kind of split into more image-based, and then this is just like everything that the why and what's and who inspires and stuff. But this first part is just the quick, like, this is what it is, this is what I'm doing. And yeah, I want to make it more for the eventual presentation I'm gonna do. Of course, I think there's like really easy ways to make it more visually impactful, so where you could get a lot of what it is just by looking at image and stuff, because they are like, even from when I did this proposal, the game has expanded a lot and there's like kind of more layers to it. That could be easily shown. Like I added like the player has to find a key and he has to go find the door that the key belongs to. If you get health back when you read about African American history and stuff, and stuff like that, where you could like easily, if I just like zoomed in on one of these pictures, shows a player about to pick up a key. Like I don't have to explain all the little gameplay things. I can just show it with a simple picture. And there are other ways, because that's kind of a big deal for this project, is how can I show what I'm doing and get the message across without having people. Ultimately, this game I think will have like around a 2 hour run time to complete it from start to finish, and that's not going to be like a thing for everyone. So it's like, how can I display what the message is? And because the story also is kind of has a bunch of layers to it, even though it is a really simple story. I kind of thought it was cool. Last class, I was like telling a little bit of the story, which I have like all here. I was just telling like one part of the story with what's it doing? I was just telling a part of the story with this character, and then just like throughout the next like 5 minutes of people asking questions, they kind of like understood. I feel like everybody in this class got the whole story, which because it is kind of a simple story, like to the point where Chris literally said what a part of the ending was going to be, and it does like follow a lot of like common storytelling tropes, which is fine in my opinion, as long as it's a compelling and just like gets the point across, and the meaning of what it shows, like elements of institutional racism, talks about all that stuff. But it is like there are layers to the story where it's like some characters represent parts of America, as well as just blatantly having institutional racism in the story and stuff like that. So a big part of my next steps are like, how can I show that visually quickly? And what I'm working on right now is in very early development, but I'm working on the intro to the game / the intro to the trailer for the game, where I'm like, it's gonna be like a 3D opening scene where the character, this is what I have so far. It's like a 3D model of the main character, of just him like watching the spaceship doors open up and view into space. And that's gonna, hopefully that would like be the perfect thing to have for like a presentation at the end of the semester. But it's the first time I've ever done anything like that, so I don't know if I'll have it in time. At least maybe like a super rough version of it. But I don't have a lot to talk about, so I think that is about it.
Thanks, Drew. I love your characters. I love seeing them. They're just wonderful.
Thank you.
So good.
Oh, the other interesting thing I thought was like, even though our two projects are like completely different, Andrew and I, our projects have like so many similarities in them. And I just like mentioned to him that I want to have like an Easter egg to his story, his choose your own adventure book project, that is, where that like references his project. And I think that'll be like maybe like the closest collaboration I have here. So like, I think that'd be really cool, because there really are like a lot of like similarities to the themes. Obviously they're two completely different projects, but like lots of sci-fi storytelling, exploring philosophical concepts, stuff like that.
Yep.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, Drew, I really think you'll be able to tell your story a lot more clearer through your thesis, because when we were talking about in our last class with Martha and Sabrina, when we were talking about that main character, the guy that's already out there in space, I do think that now you have a real opportunity to, because see, I understand your point about you don't want to get too serious and you don't want to get too playful because of this really heavy duty issue. I fully can relate to that, just because it's real, it's happening every day, so on and so forth. But I really do think that with your thesis, you'll really be able to draw on that new character who's been out there, who's basically set the stage for the character that you're dealing with now, who has been put out, along with the woman as well. And I just think that you have a real good opportunity to talk about not only institutional racism, but how the game is played literally, in terms of like, how do we navigate through institutional racism? Does it take us to go out to space to have to deal with it? You know what I mean? This very large issue that you're tackling, and that's why I say I think the thesis project is going to have a real good opportunity to explore that character, but also explore, like you said, you don't want it to be too serious, but you don't want people to not take it seriously. You know what I mean? But at the same time, you as the director, you as the designer, you're laying. I want to see those I want to see those discussions. I want to see that conversation between the guy who's already out there and the guy who's been out there since the 80s, and then the new guy, and how they connect to each other in terms of, how did you, what are you in for? That type of thing, And then the other guy says, what are you in for? Hey, we're both in on the same thing. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I really do think that you have a really good opportunity to expand the story, but also expand the meaning of what you're trying to do through institutional racism, and saying, is this what we have to do to go out to space in order to deal with this issue? We shouldn't have to. We can do it right here on Earth. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think you have a really good path in terms of what you want to explore, what you want me to explore as the user. What, I have questions. I want to know this. I want to know that. You know what I mean? And I need, and I need guidance through the game as well. So I think you have a really good opportunity to stretch this into your thesis and make it really powerful. Personally.
That's exactly why I added that character, because I wanted to add a more real. Obviously, it's fiction, but I needed it. I didn't want it all to seem like rainbows and sunshine, like this. The story that there's a hero and he just goes and saves the day. I wanted to add this character that's more on the dark, gritty side. This is what it's not. Not everybody wins, or most people, they don't end up winning.
Mhm.
But and I wanted to have that kind of tragic, powerful effect in the game.
Exactly.
And Joe's,
No, exactly. You need that tragic in there. You do, because it's tragic. Institutional racism is tragic. So it's cool that you've got this tragic and then this happy feeling, but at the same time, this happy feeling comes with a cost.
yes.
You know what I'm saying? Seriously. Good job. Very good job.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see it coming together. I can't believe the progress you make every single time I see you. It's just, it's crazy, man. And 3D. Oh,
I'm gonna need to get Abe to help me out with some of that. Probably. I'm trying to learn as much as I can before I come to him, but I will.
he would make a great thesis project advisor for you, man.
Yeah. I'm already like on him about that. So.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's good. Well done, man. Do you have more characters, or is that pretty much the cast?
Yeah, it was just like those, I think 5, and
Yeah.
and then there might be one more like level, or 6 actually, but there might be like one more level 2 boss that I add, but that's only if I have time.
Yeah. All right. Really cool, Drew. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, we're moving quick tonight. Anisha, how are things in your world, in your head?
Yeah, I'm trying to gather it all together. I don't have anything written right now, but there's a notebook I keep writing stuff in, but like it's all haywire right now. But in the past 2-3 weeks, I was trying to kind of answer this question of what am I trying to do? Where am I headed with, like, what am I doing? So I realized that over this time, I've been kind of designing interactions and interfaces. So yeah, so I think interaction design and interface design is the field that I'm looking at. And also I've realized that I've been trying to kind of play with all these gestures and the way the machine recognizes things, and just a general fact about how to make life easier for humanity. I mean, that's just where I'm headed. Like something I tell Drew about is the way I approach my projects is I think of it as as if I'm the most laziest person and I want to get this thing done. And like, what would be the easiest way to get it done? Is it reducing the cognitive load, or is it like saving time, making tasks easier for you to do? So I think that's like the general trend. And also over this period of time, I've realized with everything that I try to do, I'm trying to kind of teach my machine and get stuff out of it. Like even with gestures, it's like the machine is recognizing my gesture and doing something. Even with like, I'm trying to create this chat bot, and it's about me kind of giving inputs, running some analysis on those inputs and getting an output from my machine. So I'm kind of getting into machine learning and like making the machine smarter at the end of the day to make our lives easier. So yeah, just exploring those avenues and playing with interactions, natural user interfaces again. It's all about making your machine smarter at the end of the day. So yeah, doing a lot of coding, yes, and yeah, just thinking of speculative things. And people might hate me, but I just saw Elon's talk this weekend, and I actually agree with him on a lot of things. But yeah, there's a part of me that wants to challenge him with his own technology. Like, yeah, I don't know, like, yeah. So next semester, I'm also thinking of taking a class which is human robot interactions. I wanted to take the other one, which is not available next semester, but yeah, so interfaces, interactions, making lives easier, and what the future will be. Just, yeah.
I liked how you defined it as solving problems for the laziest among us.
Yeah,
That's really an interesting way of doing it. And I'm struck by that because I was watching a car video on a brand new electric car. I think it's the Volvo XC40, where it starts when you sit on the seat.
yeah.
Now,
So
you don't get much lazier than that. You
So
literally don't have to do anything but sit on your ass, if you'll pardon me for saying so. I mean,
Yeah.
and that starts the car.
yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like,
I
that's
think it's okay to expect more from humans than that, you know, but
yeah, that's why I say people might hate me for like the way that I'm taking that in. But the way I think of things is just to make life more easier for us when we interact with machines so that we have more time to connect with other people. That's the way I think about it. The less time we spend kind of engaging and trying to figure out how the machine is working and getting the task out of it, the more time we get to actually engage with people and make real life connections. So that's the way I think of it. And also a project like for my symposium class, the project I'm actually working on is like making a smart chair where you actually sit on the chair and your laptop starts. It recognizes who's in front of you and then it greets you and then you have all these things on the chair. So yeah, so natural user interfaces, just making everything intuitive. And yeah.
yeah, yeah, cool. Okay, great. All right, thoughts for Anisha?
I like what you said about like, so people have time to connect with each other. Because I always think of it as like the amount of wasted human time or potential just like doing basic computer things. Imagine what we could do if we didn't have to do whatever. I mean, turning your car key maybe isn't the most intensive action, but I still think it's cool. And I always like imagine if I think of like the short-term computer, it's just like a dumb screen. And when I sit down, it says, "Oh, it's you," and then loads all my stuff. And if I get up out of my chair, it's a dumb screen again.
Yeah.
One time I was talking to my partner about it, and he was like, "How does that work for a TV?" And I was like, "Well, if I sit down, I get like murder shows on Netflix, and then when you sit down, you get comedy. But if we both sit down, we get funny murder shows." I was like, "What is not to love about this idea?"
Yeah.
Like, I think it's so good. So I feel like, I mean, I still really love all of your gesture work, but I think that this is like it encompasses it.
Yeah.
in a
So
new
that
frame.
yeah, that was my idea about natural user interfaces, that it doesn't have to be always gestures. It has to fit the context of the environment that you're trying to solve the issue for.
Mhm.
Yeah, so just if just sitting is like a gesture in itself, then why not?
Yeah, it's a signal, right? That you are sitting down and you might want to start the car. So what can you do with the signals that you get that the person, the end user, whatever you want to call them, is giving you?
Anisha,
And
a quick
al-
question. Oh,
yeah.
sorry about that. Anisha, I just have a quick question. Are you designing this product for the user to be able to help him or herself? Or are you creating this project for the technology to help the user solve problems? Or do you want the user to be the person in control of the problem solving, if that makes sense?
I'm not sure if I correctly got that question, but if I want the user to be in control.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I'm
Yeah,
just wondering,
I-
like, you as the designer, do you feel more comfortable with the way technology is going these days and, smartphones doing this and doing that? Do you as a designer feel that it's important for the user to still be able to engage, but be the person in charge of the engagement? Does that make
Definitely, I
sense?
think, yeah. So if like the way I think of making devices smart is for them to be customizable as well. So depending on how you want them to be smart,
Mhm.
are they smart? So yeah, depending on what the user wants, that's how the machine is supposed to react.
Okay.
It's
that makes
like
sense.
the enter point of making the machine smart is for it to make it react to what you want it to be.
Okay. Thank you.
And also in doing that, as I'm like looking into machine learning and like AI and all these things to make the machine smarter, it's like I'm getting all these questions about all the data sets and like how the data sets need to be more inclusive and they have to fit the context. So like in the future, I think like how we collect data and how we make that data set more inclusive and how we present it to humanity, it's going to be super important.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
Well, I guess that's going to be the value of machine learning, in that the machine can learn what you, Anisha, want, not what all seven of us, what's best for all seven of us from the engineering perspective, right? It can learn what's good for Chris, what's good for Drew, what's good for Simone, for me, right? But
Yeah.
we're different. We're not there yet, right? But I think Chris's question is really important, and this is one of the problems with autonomous cars, is that a lot of people don't feel like they have any control over the autonomy of the car as it's presented to them. So much so that you've got to futz around inside Tesla's giant screen to figure out all the options for just basic user controls of the car that Henry Ford figured out 100 years ago, right?
Like reversing.
Yeah, like reversing, like blinker stocks, like shifting gears automatically or physically if you wanted to, all sorts of stuff, right? So it really is, it's an interesting push and pull, right?
yeah, I think the problem with autonomous cars is the fact that it's not fully autonomous yet, and not every car is autonomous. Given the technology develops in the next 10 years where computer vision is able to recognize things, and it is developing very fast, like it will be able to.
Absolutely.
And given in the future every car is autonomous on the road, I think it's going to be a safer way to commute. And then again, that gives you that time to socialize and have real interactions rather than actually concentrating. So yeah, the technology is far away, a little far away, not too far, but yeah.
Well, what I think is super exciting about what you're doing, Anisha, and I think Andrew put an exclamation point on it, is, are we, once all of this technology is sorted out, is that what we're actually going to do with our time? Because it's not right now. What we're doing with our time is watching more TikTok videos. We're watching more YouTube videos. We're watching more tweets. We're going on FaceTime more. We're consuming more data. So I hope you really give some thought to is there something the technology can do that makes it frankly uncomfortable for us to use it enough so that we're driven back to working with humans? Or maybe it's not uncomfortable. Maybe there's a timer on our use of technology, or there's something abrasive about the experience that pushes us back into the human experience somehow. I don't know. It would be very interesting to think about that, right? Like, I'm going to look at this data, but it's in this phosphorescent green color. So I can look at it for a few minutes, but after that, I really get a headache. So I'm going to go back and talk to my wife instead. Right? I don't know.
Yeah, so one of the projects that I'm doing for my studio class is to make a toxic chatbot of sorts. So it's like at the end of the day, the machine is smart, but it's toxic. So it, like, you won't like it, you'll go back to your real partner. So it's like making you realize how amazing your real partner is compared to.
Okay, so you are keeping that in mind, that relationship, very consciously.
Definitely. But I
Okay,
think
cool.
the bigger picture for me is, I think, yeah, like ethics definitely are there, but like I'm trying to solve for products. I'm trying to solve for like making lives easier, and yeah, just yeah. I think products are like gonna be my main focus, but definitely all of these things.
Yeah, cool. All right. Good stuff, you guys. You're all in great places with 3 weeks left to go. Good stuff. Good stuff. Okay. Anything else tonight? All right, Anisha, can we chat for just 1 minute? I want to talk about tomorrow real quick. And then Simone, I'm happy. You want to come back in like 5-10 minutes?
I can
Okay.
do that. Thank
Okay,
you.
great. And I will share the recording with you guys tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.
I'll see you guys.